Welcome to Northpointe Plus, our podcast that happens after the Sunday services to just give us a chance to talk more and really explore what we experience on Sunday morning at a different level. This is episode 87. You guys are 87. How's that?
Oh, wonderful.
We have as our special guests today, Wallace and Mary Kamau from Kenya, from Nairobi, Kenya, and Missions of Hope International. And so welcome, y'all.
Thank you
so much. We are so excited to be here.
Right now, you guys are about ready for a nap, right?
Almost there. After this podcast, we have a ride to the airport, go to Phoenix. Yeah.
We were talking at lunchtime about the opportunity that just how God has been in this, that they just happen to have this particular Sunday open and available, and we're able to come to Northpointe, and that's just a cool thing. They are heading back to Kenya on Tuesday
morning,
but have been in the States since Mary since March and Wallace since January, visiting churches, and this particular Sunday just happened to be open, and so it just worked out wonderfully. We typically talk just a little bit about kind of an overview of what happened in the message on Sunday, and just as an overview, just paint kind of a big picture of what the purpose of Missions of Hope International is for somebody who maybe wasn't in the service, and so they just have a sense of kind of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, Missions of Hope is a Christian non-profit organization that works among the vulnerable communities, and we work with the vulnerable children and their families to empower them holistically. And by holistic ministry, we mean that we educate the next generation with the normal curriculum, but we are very intentional sharing the love of Christ and teaching them the Word of God. And we empower other community members through economic empowerment and through the restoration ministry, where we use health. We educate on preventive health and offer curative services. And we are very, very intentional in all that to share the love of Christ. And so it goes with church planting and discipleship.
Was that the plan, that holistic approach, was that the plan from the very beginning, or did it really just start with the school and then grow from there? How'd that work?
Actually, when we first started, this was just because we wanted to respond to a calling that we felt God laying on our hearts to reach out to the people living in Mathare Valley, just to share with them the love of Jesus and to tell them that God loved them. We didn't have much resources, so we could not have thought of big things, honestly, because at the time, only Wallace had a regular job. He had a salary, and that is only the resources that we had. We didn't have any idea that God would expand this ministry to what it is today. And so the strategy at that point God gave us was to get the kids into a small school. We started with 50 because that's the much we could dream at that point.
That was the big dream.
That was the big dream, and it was a big thing. It was a big step of faith, honestly. And we thought we would have these kids, teach them in preschool, then kindergarten, and then maybe set them out to public schools, and then get another group of kids and things like that. And but God had a different plan.
Yeah, and so that plan has now, 23 years later, grown to become 27,000 kids, 34 communities, 2 countries. That's cool. And I didn't realize that, Wallace, you were the sugar daddy for MOHI at the beginning. That you were the fund, you were the source of that God was using to provide the money to make it happen, right, through Price Waterhouse.
Yeah, I was then working as a CP, and then I went to the insurance industry as a chief finance officer. And through those resources, we were able to start, and God has been faithful. And probably just to add, it was not just the money that I got from the corporate world, but the knowledge and the experience. It has become so handy in ministry as the ministry has grown that we are able to set up systems and develop leaders and be able to run the ministry.
That's one of the things from my perspective that I think is so significant in terms of what's happening with MOHI. For both of you, your training, God has used your commitment to be well trained to help the organization and the mission be accomplished on a completely different level than you ever anticipated from the beginning. So now I forgot to say this second service, but Wallace, you have a doctorate in leadership, a PhD, and Mary, you're in your last year of your doctorate as well. And that educational background, God's been able to use to be able to think, how is it that we can do what we're doing, scale it, and continue to grow it, and now into multiple countries? How do we do all that in a way that honors God and that just allows you to keep reaching more kids?
Yes, as a leader, honestly, you have to keep learning. You have to keep, equipping yourself for the work of ministry. One thing that we believe in is that whatever we do, even though we are doing for the most vulnerable children and their families and their communities, God wants us to do an excellent job in loving them. And so you can do an excellent job if you are also keeping on learning and equipping yourself and also equipping those around you.
Yeah. It's so cool to have you guys here after having been to Kenya and seeing you in that element. To have you here at Northpointe that's just been a special joy. We actually have some cool questions that I want to ask. I want to say first, thank you to Northpointe. 74 kids are being sponsored with MOHI as a result of what happened this morning, which is really, really incredible. If you weren't able to sponsor a kid and you're still interested in doing that, we can make that happen. We have some more of the children who are in that area where Chumani is, where we've helped to build the church. And so we can connect you with them. We also have a QR code that you can do that can help you sponsor that way as well. And so we're jazzed about that. One of the questions that we got in was this: what about the orphans? Who pays for their school? Because the model that you have is that the parents are involved in helping provide some of the cost of the education for the kids, along with sponsors, but that they're invested. So where do the children who are orphans, where do they live? How do they get connected with school? Is there an orphanage? How's that work?
So for the children who are orphaned in our communities, the beautiful thing is that we come alongside the extended family members. And we talk with them, we provide counseling for them, and we empower them so that they can be able to take care of the children who are orphaned. So sometimes you'll find it is an aunt or an uncle or even as a cousin to the parent of this child that is willing to bring in this child and make them, take care of them as their own. And so you'll find that for the children who are orphaned, even in our profile cards, we indicate that child is under the care of a guardian.
Okay.
Because that guardian could be an aunt or an uncle or a grandma or a grandfather. But you'll find that when an extended family member, like an aunt or an uncle, takes in this boy or girl and make them their own, they are more willing to do that when Missions of Hope is available to provide for education and the food and the uniforms. And that is why sponsorship is very key. And so you'll find that those relatives become more willing when they know that the child is already under the support of Missions of Hope. And so we always say that instead of doing an orphanage center, I mean, you can imagine an orphanage with 27,000 children. So
no, I can't imagine.
Yeah, so you don't want that.
Yeah.
But you want that child to be part of a family setup.
Yeah.
And when that child grows under the care of an aunt or an uncle, they actually take those as their guardians and they appreciate them more. And so, as we mentioned, that we like to empower the community to take care of their own needs. And so we like to empower these relatives so that they can take care of their own children. And that kind of builds their relationship with this child. And the child will always be grateful that their aunt stepped in, or their uncle stepped in, or their grandma stepped in and became the parent or the guardian for their lives when they needed it.
This is just kind of a cultural question. Is it accurate to say that in Kenya and in the areas where you work, where people are very vulnerable, that there is a stronger family connection than like in the U.S. If a kid would lose both parents, they oftentimes would just go into some kind of institution, where it seems like in the slums or even in the rural communities, there is extended family relatively close around, that there is some connection to that child, maybe who lost their mom and dad. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is true. And it's something that is so strong that the community will always come and ensure that they take care of their orphans or any vulnerable children. And mostly it is through the extended family.
Yeah.
They are obligated to take care of their orphans.
Wow, it's good. It's funny because when I think back about when we were there and we walked through the slums, somehow in my mind, I just anticipated that every family, every individual would kind of be on their own, separated from everybody else. And it was very clear in walking through that area. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody was in everybody's business. And we were the only white people walking around. But you could hear people say, and I don't remember what the Kenyan phrase was, but they were saying, "Oh, those are white people. Those are Mary's people. They're okay." But there really was a sense of community, even in that poor area, that people knew where they fit in that community. Is that a good description?
Yes, actually, it is so amazing to see how these people in these vulnerable communities take care of each other. You will find that if a family is going through a problem, others in their neighborhood come in and help and support that family. Like in Kenya, most people don't have medical covers, like health insurance, medical insurance, or if somebody loses a loved one, there is nothing like funeral services, insurance. So, but people come together and they contribute the little they have to support that family that has a problem, that is in need. You'll find them helping even with funeral expenses. You'll find them helping with medical expenses.
Wow.
Like they do fundraisers to support each other. So in the same spirit, that's what they do for children who are orphaned. And more so, when they have an organization like Missions of Hope, you'll find that somebody who is not even a relative, if a child loses a parent and is left as an orphan, somebody who is not even a relative will bring that child to our school and explain and say, this is what has happened to this child. Can you please see how you can help this child? Wow. And that person, who is not even probably a relative, is more than willing to take that child and watch out for them. And then the child is supported through Missions of Hope until such a time when now other relatives may show up and be able to commit to help.
That's an incredible testament to both of you, but to the organization as well, that people recognize the power of love to transform lives and to entrust you. We got a question that said, can you share how your children are serving in ministry along with you? So we didn't really talk about it this morning, but how many children do you have, and can you tell us about them?
Yeah, we have 3 biological children, but we also have 3 foster children, and they are serving alongside us in the ministry. Our firstborn daughter, who is 26, after her graduate school, she came straight to Kenya and is now working with us. She's been able to establish a mentorship program for all the schools, and she handed it over to somebody else, and now is developing monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning systems and tools across the organization. And she is very passionate about the ministry and very, very keen on the mentorship of the children.
Wow.
And our son is an architect, and he's doing an internship in a church in Phoenix. But he's always talking about how he would want to come back and improve on the infrastructure of, Missions of Hope. The other day he was talking to us about how he can put up cabinets in every class just to ensure that children have a place to put in their supplies and
store their stuff.
Yes, and our young son is 17, and he loves soccer.
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he would also want to, help the kids back at home when when he's grown. And we know that he has passion for the ministry and as well foster children. As a matter of fact, they have been involved in one way or the other in the ministry.
Yeah. So David, your youngest is 17, is that right?
Yeah, he's 17.
Yeah. And can you just do a short version of how the foster kids came to be a part of your families?
Yeah. So we have two older sons, foster sons. Their mom is actually my sister-in-law, sister to Wallace, and she was a single mom. And when these boys were age 13 and 11, she just left. Oh. And she was gone for more than 16 years. She just came back during COVID. So we took care of these boys, took them to school, made sure they went through college. Actually, the firstborn, Peter, just got married on December 31st of 2022.
Congratulations.
And by the time he completed college, he worked in our IT department. And he was very instrumental, especially when Missions of Hope was developing the data management system that we are currently using, the portal, for all our children. Because all the 27,000 children in the portal. So Peter worked closely with the company that was helping to develop that. And then we have a foster daughter who is 15. And this girl, we got her, I still remember, June 26, 2019. We have a school in northwestern Kenya among the Turkana people. And we had this girls' conference. And during the conference, I saw this young girl all with beads on her neck. And she was standing at the window looking inside this room where we had a lot of our girls having fun in a girls' conference, doing crafts, having snacks, lemonade and things like that with a church that had come from California. And when I looked through the window and I saw this girl, I could tell she was so young and she was looking so sad. And our eyes met. And then I called her and she came in and I offered her some lemonade, some snacks. And I tried to talk to her, but she didn't understand any language that I could speak. She only knew Turkana. And I don't speak Turkana. And so I called one of our social workers, Rhoda, to help translate. And I asked this girl what she was doing, who she was, and all that. And she ended up telling us that she was married to somebody. And she pointed outside the window to this guy who was like in his 40s, but looking much older than 40s. And this guy...
how old was she?
That time she was hardly 12. She was almost 12.
Wow.
So her birthday is July 12th, and the day I met her was June 26th. So she was a few days to becoming 12. And she said that was her husband. And that really broke my heart. I felt like some anger of just wanting to rescue her from that situation because she was... she was so beautiful, yet looking so sad because girls her age were attending our school, and they're the ones that were in this conference, and they were all in beautiful school uniform. But with her, she was being called somebody's wife. And so I told her to join one of the groups in the room, and she joined, and she was happy to join the group, and she was able to become a young girl again. And meanwhile, me and Rhoda went out to talk to this guy, and I talked with him, and I told him I would really want Joyce to come to our school so that she can enjoy the way these girls are enjoying. And he told me he had paid dowry for her, and she was his wife. And I said, no, this is a young girl. And he told me he had paid 5 camels and 30 goats.
5 camels and 30 goats.
To her parents. And so I found myself negotiating with him. And I told him that I would give him a job as a guard for one of our properties in that area. And meanwhile, I wanted her to let Joyce come to school. And he agreed to that. But then he told me that I needed to talk to Joyce's dad so that Joyce's dad doesn't ask for more animals for dowry from him.
Wow.
Now that I was taking the girl away from him. And I told him to call Joyce's dad. Joyce's dad was like living in this remote village. It took him 2 hours on a motorbike to come from that remote village to come to where we were. And I explained to him what had happened and how I wanted to take Joyce to school. And he told me, well, that's okay. I'm not going to stop you from doing it. However, Joyce has to become your child because I cannot have her back to my home because I'll look like I'm a swindler. Like I swindled this man.
Wow.
He paid dowry and then I took back my daughter. And so that's their culture. They don't know anything better than that. And when I talked to him and I saw like these people, it's like this is what they know. They don't know anything else.
Yeah.
But the fact that now there was an opportunity presenting itself for this girl, they were willing to let her go. And so he told me Joyce had to become my daughter. And of course I agreed. And then I called Wallace to let him know that now we have a new daughter and all this. And within no time, that same day, we took out all the beads because when somebody gets married in this community, the aunts and the neighbors, all the women give her beads so that she can keep up that beauty, you know?
Yeah.
So we cut off all the beads and we gave her a school uniform and she joined our school.
Wow.
Now, it is that was 2019. Joyce had never been in school at all until that day, June 26, 2019. Today, Joyce is in 8th grade in a private school where we pay school fees for her in Nairobi. She speaks fluent Kiswahili, she speaks fluent English, and she's an A student. And this year, she's going to sit for a national exam. And I have no doubt that she's going to make it to high school. And she's so beautiful. I'm so proud of her. And through her, we ended up going, because our goal is just for her to get education. So we got connected to her village. And as of today, because of Joyce and what God did on that particular day, we now have a school in this remote village with 321 children attending school. A community where there had not been a school, but because of this girl and how God moved on that day, with all that happening, there is now 321 boys and girls attending school in that remote village.
That's so incredible to just see how God works, how God is using you guys, and how being obedient. I talked this morning about love. Love can only happen with risk and courage. That saying yes, you never know what's on the other side. But now it's impacting hundreds of kids in a village that was just out there. So yeah, really, really cool. one of the questions that came in said, are there schools still existing where you started them 20 years ago? How do you see community impact as those students have grown and now become adults in the community? So that first school that you started in Mohari Valley, what does that still exist? What's it look like? And how has that impacted that slum area?
The school still exists where we started, and it is a permanent structure, which I believe will remain as a beacon of hope. And people will look at it and know that, this is where my life was changed. And it will still continue, to change many generations to come.
Yeah.
But one of the things that is true is that the community has changed in their attitude towards life. Because when we came in, these children who are going to public schools, which are very ill-equipped, very few would go to high school. The transition to high school was only 5%. And most of them used to drop out of school even before they got grade 8, where they could do a national exam.
Pause just for a second, so that the culture in Kenya. Once you finish with primary school, you have to take an exam in order to qualify to go to high school. You can't just automatically go to high school. You have to be proficient at a certain level. And so in this area, it was only 5% made it into high school.
Yeah, and so going to school did not mean anything. It didn't represent hope for that community because they would never go beyond, grade 8. But now they have seen their children going to high school and excelling, and some of them going to college. And we have the likes of Jacinta, who is now an attorney. And so education has changed to be a key to development or to breaking out of the cycle of poverty. And so it has offered hope. The fact that we've been there doing economic empowerment and offering health, this community has actually changed and their hope has increased. In fact, there's one time when there was a gang that was extorting money from the community. And they were doing it because people felt disempowered and they could not fight back. But now they can fight for their rights. And this group cannot operate in that area because, people's lives have been changed. Their attitudes have been changed. They want to stand up for their own rights and even for the rights of the vulnerable among their own.
Yeah, so in that area, in the slums that you talked about this morning, 800,000 people in an area that's a half mile wide and 3 miles long. There's not just the one school there, though, right? MOHI has how many schools?
Well, in the slums, we have 14 schools.
14 schools.
Yes. So from that one school, we kept adding, and we have kept adding. And now in total, we have 14 schools in the slums.
In the slums. There's some important things from my perspective that I just want to communicate. We tend to think, I'll just talk from my perspective. I just hadn't really thought about it. In Nairobi's a major city. It's 5-6 million people, something like that.
Yes.
And so in that environment, to have if you think about a major city, land costs a lot. And Nairobi's a major city. It's got technology. It's got, all of the stuff that happens in a major city. It's not a poor, under-resourced city. It's a city that's got issues, all that kind of stuff. So having land, having a facility in that slum, even in the slums, is very costly, right?
Yes, it actually costs a lot of money
to
get just a very small portion of land in these slums. You'll find maybe the biggest you can find is like 50 by 100 feet. And then you'll be able to find that for that kind of a piece of land, it may cost you even up to $100,000 or $150,000.
Just for that,
just for that piece.
Before you build anything.
Before you build anything.
Yeah.
And so what we do in the slums, we buy that small portion. Sometimes you may buy 30 by 30 or 30 by 50, and then you just buy 2 of them. then you combine and you just put up a high-rise building,
Yeah.
several stories, and that is what we use for our school buildings.
Yeah. So when we were there last year and we had a chance to see that school, I think there are 8 floors, if I remember right.
The main school has 6 floors.
6 floors.
Yeah.
Okay. And you see it in the videos where it says MOHI Missions of Hope on there. It's a strong presence in the community, which is just really, really cool. Somebody asked, where does MOHI get their church planters from? So you've got a focus in terms of your ministry on education, helping develop kids, but the partnership with churches. Where do those people who plant churches come from?
Back when we started, we also started with a church plant. And the people that we preached to from Mathare Valley, these are the people that we discipled. And they were the first pastors that we discipled actually to take up the responsibility of planting the very first few churches. But as we continued, we realized that there is need to partner with other churches that were also training church planters. And so today we are partnering with more than one church. And that has really been very, very helpful because we've been getting some very good, well-trained church planters, and partnership has also been very, very helpful. In one of the communities up northern Kenya, where already another church had been there, they had mission stations, it was very easy to establish the schools. And so this has created a lot of synergy, and we are able to accomplish more within a shorter time. And the impact is big because of the partnership that we have with other churches.
Yeah, when my understanding is when the principal of the school and the pastor of the church are on the same page, the power, the synergy that happens in that in terms of the impact on the community, impact for the kingdom is just huge.
Yeah, actually, it's wonderful because when we go into a community and we decide that we are going to plant a church there, we are going to start a school there, it is usually much easier for the pastor actually to get started with evangelizing and also discipling people in that community. And also we said a social worker or social workers together with this church planter so that they can be able to start reaching out to this community. And as they go through the process of identifying the children, then doing parents' meetings before the school start, already these people start identifying with this pastor or this church planter as their pastor. And that's what happened in Chumani, where we sent Dan. And so you'll find that with these Kenyan church organizations that we are partnering with, as Wallace has mentioned, like Christ is the Answer Ministry, or CITAM in short, or Nairobi Chapel, or Deliverance Church, or Outreach Hope Church, all these churches, they want to plant churches. They want to go to different communities, but sometimes some of those communities are more difficult. And so when there is the aspect of the school, it really open doors that would otherwise not be able to open. And that is what we have found. And the church planter then works with the school and become the pastor of the community.
I love it. I love the fact all parents care about their kids. And when you have somebody coming in that says, I want to help your child learn, I want to help them grow, I want to give them hope, parents are going to say, well, yeah, sure, I want that too, as long as it's safe, as long as I'm not threatened by that. And the opportunity for the gospel to come into that situation is really, really powerful. So yeah, that's great stuff. I want to spend a little bit of time with this question. Please, this is from Ethan Evans, one of the guys who was in I think second service today. Please talk in as much detail as possible for as long as Rick will let you about the microloan business generation stuff. Would these families even be able to seek financing from local banks or lenders? What skills and trades do you teach? do you teach any business management skills? Thank you for all that you do. So whichever one of you want to take that and run with it, go for it.
Yeah, you find that when we go to these vulnerable communities, even the confidence to start business, they do not have.
Yeah.
And so that is why we come with an approach, an empowerment approach, whereby we want to mentor them to a point whereby they can even have the confidence to start their own businesses. And sometimes we have to start with skills training, whereby when they get a trade skill, they can either get employment, or because they have that skill, they can be able to start small. Like when we have sewing, when they finish the training on sewing, we'll normally give them a sewing machine. And with that, they can be able to start their business even just within their own homestead.
Yeah.
And what also happens is that these people do not have any collateral, so they cannot be able to obtain loans from the banks. And we are able to encourage them just to start saving small. Whatever little they have, they start saving. I still remember when we started the microfinance program, it started with 12 women who wanted just to save among themselves. And they would each come with the equivalent of $1. Every week they would meet. And the lump sum amount would be given to one of the members. And then the next week it would be given to the other person. And so in turns, each one of them was able to get a lump sum amount. And with that amount, they started small businesses like selling second-hand clothes or even selling cereals within the community. And with those small businesses, they approached Mary and asked if she would introduce them to a microfinance organization. And when she tried to introduce them, they did not even qualify, to meet their criteria for getting loans. And that is when we decided, why don't we look for our own money? And we told these women, instead of saving and sharing the money between yourselves, put it into our fund. And then once each one of you has been able to save as much as it was equivalent of $32, you can be able to borrow 5 times your savings and be able to boost your businesses. And so that is how the microfinance program started. Wow. And through, the help of people, who have partnered with us, churches and other, well-wishers, that fund has grown. And now it stands at more than $2 million, US dollars.
Wow.
And the loan portfolio is about $2.5 million because other groups have been formed. In every community where we go. And they will normally start small, just by saving, because we want them to develop the discipline of saving. And we also want them to form groups where there is accountability. And that accountability is so important, because if one of them defaults, then the others have to pay for that person. And so they watch for one another. And they are ready also to help one another. If somebody is struggling, they will help one another. So that group accountability and the fact that we train them and help them to develop the discipline of saving, it is actually very, very helpful. And our repayment rate has been very, very good. It has averaged around 95%. And it's only when during the time of COVID and earlier on when there was violence in the country that it had gone down to 89%. But the repayment rate has always been very high.
And if I understand right, when you provide the money, the loans for micro businesses or whatever, the more that an individual or a business proves faithful, the more money becomes available to them, right?
Yeah, actually, the highest loan we have now been able to give is equivalent of $20,000.
Wow.
And these people paid back.
But it's paid back, and it's somebody who had proven themselves faithful already multiple times.
Yes.
Before they got up to that level.
Yeah, they actually keep growing their business, and of course because of the training on business skills. Yeah. That is very helpful. And then the mentorship that they get from our credit officers. We call them credit officers or business officers. So they mentor these business people. And so as that continues, and then there are also times when we invite people from other places who are successful business people to come and do trainings for our clients. Now we call them clients. Once they are in our microfinance program, we then call them clients because they need to think that way. And so they come. So we'll invite people from outside. They'll provide the training, and they'll share their experiences, how they grew their business from point A to point B, then to point C to point D. And you find that these people are just so eager to learn. And as they learn, they keep improving their businesses. And that is what has helped to grow. And then, and the interesting thing is that those we started with, for example, I like telling stories. For example, there is this one woman, her name is Anne. And Anne used to be a beggar in the streets before her children became part of Missions of Hope. And after the children joined Missions of Hope, 2 boys, she ended up talking to us about starting a small business of buying long bars of soap and cutting it into pieces and selling it in the community. Like that was the initial business that she did. And then that business, and so the first loan we gave her was 1,000 shillings. By that time, it was like $15 equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
And
so that she could buy the soap.
She could buy the initial soap.
Yeah.
And then she started selling it. And as of today, Anne is actually a businesswoman. She has expanded her business. She sells bar soap, she sells salt, she sells loose tea to different restaurants along the same streets where she used to go and sit, pretend to be lame and beg. She identified those restaurants and she's able to sell to them salt and tea. And then most of the times those restaurants, they use bar soap like to clean dishes and things like that. And so she sells to them. And she was able to buy property outside Mathare and build her own house. So she no longer lives in the slums. But the other beautiful thing is that by the time her business grew enough to be able to support her children, it was time for her children to go to college. Now, our sponsorship program doesn't cater for university education, not unless somebody takes a loan in our higher education loan program. And so she was able to save money and she was able to educate her children through college. So 2 of them are now university graduates.
From a mom who was a beggar.
From a mom who was a beggar.
That's Jesus' ability to change lives.
Next time you come, remind me so that I can call Anne.
That would be great.
Meet Anne in person.
That would be great. Just a couple of things just before we close. I think it's helpful for everybody who watches or listens to just take a second and to think about the scale and impact of MOHI, of the ministry. So you said this morning, 1,500, 1,600 employees, virtually all in Kenya, virtually all of them Kenyans, people who are using their skill to help make a difference through MOHI. And that those employees, lots of them are teachers, but there are cooks, custodians. There's you have an IT group that does all the technology stuff. You have social workers, video production. The video that we got came from the MOHI crew that we were able to show this morning. There's in the schools, as not every child is going to go to university, so there was like a cosmetology school or a part where people could learn how to cut hair and to do physical care kinds of things, welding. What are there other kinds of things?
So we have hairdressing and beauty, we have fashion and design, we have welding, we have plumbing, we have electrical, we have IT, just general computer training. We also started culinary arts. and with emphasis on baking. People love to learn how to bake.
That's because we love to eat, right?
Yeah, and that's everywhere. And
Yeah.
actually, we have like right now our baking skills and culinary art school has the longest waiting list of
Wow.
people that want to join that school, but we can only do a few at a time.
Yeah.
So currently we have 60 students in that school. 30 come in the morning and 30 in the afternoon. And so we can't do more than 60 at a time,
Right.
not unless we start more schools of culinary arts. And so those kind of skills are usually very helpful to these people, and they can use those skills to be able to find jobs and be able to even start their own businesses.
Yeah. Just as we finish, is there more that you guys would like to share about Chumani, about the church that we're helping partner with and helping build there? We talked at lunch about planning already for maybe a trip to Kenya in the summer of 2024 next year, and being able to go and visit the kids that we might sponsor, and to visit the church and encourage the church there as well. Anything that you'd like to share?
Well, Chumani is a community that is predominantly Muslim, or that is a perception. But as we have interacted with the community, we realize that there are some people who don't even go to a mosque or even to a church, and so they are more than welcoming to hear the gospel. And the other thing in the community is that witchcraft is something that people fear, and so they live in fear. But when they get to know Jesus Christ, I know this will be very, very transforming, that they can put their hope in Christ and no longer fear witchcraft or practice witchcraft. And we are looking forward to a great transformation in this community of Chumani.
Yeah, I keep saying we're going to finish, but there's so many other things I keep wanting to talk about. When we had a chance to visit the camp, so when we talked this morning about Chumani, this area where the church is, it really happened out of the decision to build the camp for the students, and that there were people in the community that were helping alongside with that construction. The MOHI people were having church, then the community people wanted to continue to be a part of that. They were drawn to the worship, drawn to the teaching. And when the camp was built, they said, okay, well, what do we do now? Because the camp began to be utilized, and the people from the community couldn't come into the camp, obviously with the kids there in terms of safety. Pause just for a second and say, one of the things that impressed me incredibly was the camp and the opportunity for those kids who come from either very poor rural areas or from the slums to be able to go into a beautiful setting, not that far from the ocean, and to learn about Jesus and to be discipled was just phenomenal. How many kids can be at the camp at any one point in time?
We can be able to accommodate up to 150 students.
About 150 students.
At a time.
Yeah.
And they spend at least 10 full days at the camp.
Yeah.
For most of these students, it is their first time ever to get out of their remote village or slum community. And so as they ride on a train from Nairobi, riding through the Tsavo National Park and seeing all these animals, it's like a free safari, riding on a train and then being bused to the camp from the train station. It is an experience of a lifetime. Yeah. And this happens to all our 6th grade students from our schools. And we normally will have boys separate from girls camp. And it's amazing because when we first started building this camp, we actually didn't know that was going to open up that community. Right. But then the people in that community just loved Missions of Hope. They loved the idea that we actually came to this community to do a camp there for our children.
Yeah.
And so that's when they actually started asking, can we also get a school? Can we also get a Missions of Hope school? Can we get a church in our community? And only for us to do like some survey in the community and realize that most of the children actually don't go to school.
Don't go
in
to
that
school at all.
community.
Yeah.
And that's what made us feel that we had to also now have this community. And we are believing God that even as the church has started and the church is now getting its own building, so they don't have to meet at a tree anymore. So now they'll have their own building because of Northpointe and their bold generosity. And then in the future, we want to build a school right there in the community so that each kid can walk to and from school, from their homes, and be able to and see what will happen in that community.
Yeah.
And I believe that hundreds, if not thousands, of children will be transformed right there in that community. And by the way, we already have children identified right there in that community. If we started that school tomorrow, we would have over 400 children.
Wow.
And then there is another about 500 whose names have not even been put on the identified children list. And so it's like within no time we could easily have 1,000 kids there. And because the church is now being built, they actually think that we should start the school in the church building. That's what I was just.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So, so if you have resources, if you've got $500,000 or $1 million to build that school, man, that'd be cool. I want to encourage you, anybody who's watching, pray for Chumani. Put that location on your prayer list. Pray for Pastor Daniel. Pray for the people who live there. Pray for MOHI. Pray for Wallace and Mary. And we're just so excited again that you're here, that God's allowed that to happen, allowed our paths to cross. We are big believers in seeing where God is working and joining Him there. And we feel like God has really done that in our partnership. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We be sure and like, share, do all that good stuff. And thanks again for being a part of episode 87 of Northpointe Plus. And if you want to go back and hear Jake and my recollections of our trip to Kenya, I didn't go back and look for the number, but I want to say it's about episode 42 or 43, somewhere in there. We did a special broadcast about our trip. And so you can check that out as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.